Gerard,
Welcome to the Trenton Board of Education, Trenton Board of TV Radio on WIMG 1300 AM and WPHY Verizon Channel 28. The Stellar World Gospel Winning Station, 4-time Stellar World Gospel Winning Station, WIMG 1300, Music for the Soul. We're just so thankful for their sponsorship, as well as WPHY Verizon Channel 28. I'm yours truly. I'm hosting the conversation with the superintendent along with my fellow board members. My name is Gerald Trueheart. I'm a board member. I chair the Family Community Engagement Committee and the Policy Committee. I sit with Jenny Weeklam, who chairs our Buildings and Grounds Committee as a part of that committee. We have our board president, Abby Daniels-Lane, on our call this afternoon. We also have Jenny Weeklam, our chair of our Facilities and Community Engagement Committee, on the call tonight, as well as our Superintendent, James Earle, our starting July 1, 2021, 21-22 school year. We're so thankful for James' time to come up, be a part of our broadcast and to answer the questions and have a conversation around the education of Trenton Public Schools. Assistant Superintendent, Secondary, Wilfredo Ortiz. We also have our Denise Crease, our Parent Community Liaison and Homeless Liaison. I do now see Jean Bowie, our past president, as well as our chair of our Operations Committee as part of our broadcast tonight as well. I don't see any other board members at this time, so we'll get started in our conversation right away. So I want to pose the first question, of course, to Mr. James Earle, but first of all, we want to give our board president an opportunity to have some opening comments. Abby Daniels-Lane.
Right, so good afternoon. Again, I just want to say welcome to everyone. And certainly this is another conversation in our efforts to, in fact, introduce our incoming superintendent to the community. And so certainly thank you for all who have joined us this afternoon. And we look forward to hearing your comments, questions, and concerns again as we transition our incoming superintendent, Mr. James Earle, into our district. So thank you again for your presence and thank you for your questions and whatever comments you have to offer.
I'd like to also open up some initial comments from our other board members. We'll start with Jenny Weeklam and then we'll go over to Jean Bowie. Jenny?
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody again this week. I've found these very enlightening sessions we've had, and I want to welcome James Earle to the district, and I'm looking forward to working with everybody. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, good afternoon. So it's an honor to sit here. I've heard some really good things. Normally I'm incredibly busy. So to be able to sit in on this is a really good thing for me. Just wish James a real welcome. I think I've said that to you a number of times, young man. Glad to have you on board, and I'm looking forward to this. Thanks.
And then before we actually go into any questions, we'd like to have opening comments from our Superintendent, James Earle.
Well, just good afternoon, and Mr. Bowie, Mr. Trueheart, Ms. Weeklam, and President Lane. Just want to thank you all for setting this up and inviting me. It's good to see you again, Wilfredo. Thank you for joining us. This was very informative last week and gave me an opportunity to reflect about some of the suggestions, ideas, and concerns maybe that's on the front, the forward thinking in Trenton. And so I wanted to spend time always, hopefully getting more opportunities. I know I'll see families and community tomorrow night also, but looking forward to another healthy conversation. So thank you for inviting me.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Earle. So we'll go with the first question. The first question from last week's conversation. And if those who are in the chat, please feel welcome and to ask questions in the chat. Pose your questions, and we will hopefully get to those questions this evening. I'll make sure that we address some of those questions tonight, but we do have questions from last week that we weren't able to address. Some we were, but the first question from you, Mr. Earle, is what role can local clergy play in the reopening and going forward? That was a question from Mark.
Well, I think it's going to be critical that clergy and all community organizations, including the clergy, can play a tremendous role in reopening. As I mentioned in some of my opening, we'll be dealing with the remnants of the pandemic, what happens after the pandemic's over and you end up coming to school. So what does that look like for families? What does it look like, the hardships that the pandemic has placed on many of our kids, many of our families, our teachers, our schools, and other organizations in the area. So it's going to be really interesting to have a sit down and have a conversation with members of the clergy in the town or in the city to just get a sense of, what are they seeing on a weekly basis since, for the last 15 months, and how can the school be a partner with them to support children when they walk in school, and potentially even support families in a way, because we want, the support might look very different than the traditional support. We want to meet families where they are, and quite often the best way to know that is to coordinate and communicate with members in the community. So I think that's a great starting place. It's my intent to connect as soon as possible with clergy, with community organizations, businesses, in a way that impacts children and impacts families. So I'm excited about that and hopeful, happy about the reach out, and then hopeful for the connection in the coming days.
All right, so we received a question from Marilyn Hester. What about parents that lack skills to support their children? How do you plan to help them?
Well, I think it's important. That's probably going to be, in my work, I've been most proud of finding those non-traditional ways to support families and students who may not traditionally have those structures in their settings currently. So without being in Trenton and just kind of guessing, I certainly don't make judgments before entering in an environment. What I see myself doing is learning what the needs of the families are, kind of using a one size fits all approach initially, and then really getting down to individual needs, what each family needs, what a parent in the north side or west side of town or the south side of town needs versus someone who's riding a bus. We don't know that, or I don't know that yet. So I'm a big on building foundations. I implemented a program in 2 districts known as AVID, Advancement via Individual Determination. And AVID is about building foundations for children who have pretty good academic skills, but maybe missing some foundations in the home or in their settings to go to college. So I'm really focused on building strong foundations around any structure and school and family. So what I do believe is that when you can't get parents to your setting, if we are opening schools, is there a way, I spoke about this in my last conversation, is there a way to get our services and supports to their community or to their location, closer to them, within walking distance? Or as we just talked about with the clergy, can we connect with churches and community centers where we could invite parents who may not have the foundation to a location where they feel most comfortable to learn, to ask questions, and to not be vulnerable? Because when you come to our setting at a board meeting or to a district office and you're looking at everyone who may be speaking not only a different language, but a different educational language, it would be nice to have a location where someone's just listening to it the way that it's being expressed by the parent. So I see myself building those structures around the city, certainly creating that invitational structure for parents to come in at their own will into the buildings, into the district, to sit down and have conversations like these. And I believe in the intimate setting. So what I believe what the pandemic has done in the virtual setting has actually given us an opportunity where we can't connect with parents to maybe have a setting of 25 people, enough to fit on a screen so you can see everyone's face, and just have a conversation. And So I think those things are beneficial. I don't know what that looks like, but I believe in building that foundation, and I believe in building it with the people who need it. I want to ask them, what do you need? I can easily go in my toolbox and bring, 10 or 15 things that worked for me in different locations that may not work for families there. So I'm excited to listen, to learn, and to really stay focused on the needs of families and children in the city of Trenton.
Thank you. We're going to have some comments from our Assistant Superintendent of School Support, Wilfredo Ortiz, as well as some questions from Wilfredo. Mr. Ortiz?
Basically, I'd like to follow up with Superintendent Earle mentioned, and it's an honor to be here and see him again. I had the privilege of meeting briefly with the superintendent a week or so ago. But just to share that we do have a 5-year strategic plan, yep, sir, and within that strategic plan, we do have what I refer to as the parent university. Denise will call it something else. But the fact is that we are working with community agencies. We're going to be actually working to support parents where they are. What are their needs? We're going to do a survey and find out what their needs are, and then provide for them those supports in different locations. One of them is we're looking to create community schools. And so we're identifying community schools. We want to develop that a little bit more, continue to develop it so that our schools are community schools. They're open on Saturdays. We have a hotline. Parents can come in and receive a number of services, not just educational services, but social and emotional support. They may be able to learn how to use technology, how to help their own child. So that's within our 5-year strategic plan. So I just wanted to support what you're saying, because one of the advantages that you're going to have is the plan, and some of the groundwork has been laid out for you. So it's going to be tough, but a little bit easier for you to come in and do some of the things that you're mentioning, because we've already kind of laid out that groundwork.
Right. Thank you, Wilfredo. And I did, in my reading of the plan, I could see the structures, didn't know how far you all had gotten and starting to build it, but that's exciting. Yep. Meeting parents where they are and really making them feel comfortable about coming in district or coming to a district location that's pseudo created for them. So really exciting. Thank you for sharing that.
A question from our board president, Patty Daniels-Lane.
You're muted.
You're muted.
To unmute. Okay.
There we go.
All right. There we go. Okay. So, and you may have answered this again, but I just want to, quickly ask, what would you consider to be your top priorities as you enter the district, in July for your first 180 days?
Well, I think the top priority is focusing on returning from the pandemic, and then a little bit of what Wilfredo talked about, opening school and focusing on the strategic plan. I've gone through the strategic plan, and I know that we have to still massage it some and, create some action to it. But there's some things in there I think, we've talked about in my interviews and with board members about student achievement and what that really looks like, what's really happening when you have teachers who are coming to work and students who are coming to school, and everyone appears to be working hard, but the results stay the same or haven't changed or don't change very much. So where's the disconnect is the question I'm going to ask. And then next, what do we do to see growth in those areas? So, really the first thing is making sure, we talked about foundations early a few minutes ago, but making sure that students feel safe returning into a building they haven't been in or to some of the locations, some of them, and they're also coming, maybe missing a loved one, a parent, a family member. They've been through some crisis, and our teachers and our administrators. So it's really going to be, important that, I talked in our about the 180-day plan, creating a coalition of, health professionals who can help us plan for their entry and what we might face and how we should address it. Because we don't know what it looks like. No one was ready for a pandemic. So we don't know what entry from a pandemic looks like. But what we can is bring nurses, health professionals, counselors, SACs, and any resource that we have at our disposal and start making decisions about how we will support every building, every adult, give them the capacity to be supported and to reach out for resources if needed. So I think those are some of the early things, and really to start looking at data to determine where we're falling behind in achievement, academics. I know that the board shared many of those areas with me, and see what we can join our hands and heads and arms and legs and do together. I mean, we're really going to have to do the work and stay focused there, and not yield to those opportunities that take us away from student achievement, supporting teachers, supporting students. What's happening in our classrooms? That's a question that I would have. What's happening in our classrooms that doesn't help us move the needle in student achievement? And why are some students achieving and there are others who might not be? Do some comparison, because maybe we learn a lot from those who are having success, and we can duplicate success, and we find ways to undo those things that we don't do well. So I think early on, just focused on relationships, really getting near people, hearing from them, seeing their emotion, knowing that they're returning from the pandemic, really saying to our whole staff, the whole district, we will recommit, and we'll recommit in a different way to the work that we all committed to do on paper, we committed to do in our education, and we're going to see this through as a team. And team building sometimes is very difficult, but I think we have a great opportunity to do it. So I think those are some of the early focus. I mean, I got a whole list of things, but I'm realistic to know that you can probably do 1 to 2 things really well in a plan, and everything else gets some attention, but not the attention that you need. If we can find a way to impact instruction in the classroom early, we're going to find that we're going to make a shift immediately in student achievement. So, some of those things, if we make sure that people feel safe in the building and that students are excited about coming back to school, we're going to see successes in our extracurriculars in the classroom. We're going to see relationships form very differently. So those are some of the early things, President Lane, that I've been thinking about, and the focus. But I really, I want to create a vision with you. I know that there's a mission written. There's likely, I don't know, there's 16 people on the call. There's probably 16 visions about how we will operate in Trenton. And I want to be able for us to all talk more, visit more, meet more, use the plan that's created, and then try to find our way to what's common for everyone. And that's going to look different under my leadership, simply because we can't repeat things that haven't been successful. And then we need to find a new way to do the things that can be. And I don't know all of those without some of the brains on this call. So I plan to use that as a way to build relationships and form partnerships too. So.
Thank you, Mr. Earle. Ms. Jackie Ivy had a question in our last conversation. I thought was a great question. How do you view or prioritize the arts integration and programming in the present and future educational plan for Trenton students?
Well, I think arts, no different than we talk about when we talk about achievement. We're typically looking at state test scores, which focus on math, focus on English, and a lot of the programming that we put in place to make improvements focus around those areas of math, science, social studies, and English. But I'm a firm believer. I know one of the strategic goals is developing the whole child, and arts education is about developing the whole child. Every single bit and piece of educating a child is every single period, every single minute. I think it's really important that we have a robust arts program, a robust extracurricular program, athletics program, anything that we can build that build the communication, the teamwork skills of our children, so that they're outside of the classroom environment and can see success with their peers is going to be critically important. I know that personally, without arts education and athletics, I wouldn't be where I am. I was an average academic student. I wasn't a big fan of school. I went to school because I loved everything else about school except maybe science and math. And I was a good enough student, but I realized that most of our kids are like that. You take them out of the traditional English setting and you say, let's learn English through the spoken word or poetry, and they treat it different. It's exciting, they engage different. So we're really gonna have to look at educating our kids in a non-traditional way, because nothing says that we can't. We have to give them options that maybe they haven't had before or seen before. And if they've had them and they exist at our disposal, let's do them better. Let's see how we can teach math so that it's engaging and exciting. How can we engage them in the arts so that they're having fun and it's not just going and taking tests and getting ready for, you know, a PARC test or NJSLS or whatever the new test is. We certainly want to meet those standards, but we're very clear about developing the whole child. So I'm a big proponent of that particular goal.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We got another question from Karen McLaughlin. How will you find balance between assessing students to help creative, effective instruction and ensuring our students are not over-tested?
Well, I think that's instruction. I love the first part of that, because instruction has got to be, you know, fun. I talked about non-traditional approaches to instruction. And I know there's some tradition to teaching that, you know, there's some things you just don't get around, but how can we make instruction so that it's not the traditional sit in rows and columns, the teacher gives you the information. Have we ever thought about allowing the student to have more choice in their learning? When they have more choice in learning, it doesn't appear that you have to use as much balance, because we will have to test our students or assess them to see if they're making progress. But can we do that in a classroom? Can we do that in a district assessment that's created where we can learn more about our kids instead of, you know, a state assessment or a canned purchased assessment? And can we get appropriate data to tell us they're making success? That's going to be very key. I'm not a big, I believe in balance. So let me be clear with that. I'm not big on test. I think we do need data that tells us whether our kids are making progress, but are we testing too much? I don't know what we're doing in Trenton at this point while I sit here. When I get there, I'll learn and I'll do my best to find that balance, because I think it's important when we test and we, you know, have a snapshot, if we do a projection for parents and the community about how how our kids are doing, because we talk about kids not making progress, we need to be mindful that we're not talking about numbers. We're talking about people on that screen. When you see the graph that goes up and down and it's red and black and the colors, I mean, I would love for us to tell a story about the successes, some of the challenges that we have, and do it in a way that's respectful of the hard work that we know our children do. So I want to find that balance, and I'll be looking for it. I mean, if we're testing way too much, I'll say to our board, hey, I know we want this data. Can we think of other ways and creative ways? But I really do believe that if we have, as the last question mentioned, if we have a focus on arts education and we look at instruction for those non-traditional opportunities, or giving our kids some ownership in how they learn, as opposed to walking in the class and getting the information And that's going to take some training for our teachers. It would be my intent to have strong professional development so they can, a teacher, I'm a teacher. I hate to just let go of what I've learned and what I've done all my career. So how do I help teachers to become comfortable about giving children choice and how they learn it? And that doesn't mean they run the classroom. That just means that they're going to have some idea or maybe say, here's our standard, and here's some opportunities for you to learn the standard. Choose one and watch them fly, because they move different when they have choice. And then there's a different balance. There's a different learning. So when it's testing time, students are excited because they know the content and they've been involved in it. They can share that. And two, they have a better chance to be successful when you know. How many times have we all on this call, 16 people, arrived to an assessment and have no idea what we're doing, knowing that failure looms for us? I don't want that anymore. I want to find a way in our classrooms to make sure that our students arrive confident, ready to be successful, ready to persevere and overcome when they're in an assessment so they can have success. So it'll take some time to figure out what we do already, how we can find balance, but to really give teachers those resources and the support and professional training to be able to do that in a classroom setting.
Okay, this is Jeannie.
Hi, Jeannie.
Question I have is regarding the absenteeism rate in the district. It's a real problem. It's even worse with the pandemic. We have kids that haven't been around for 15 months. How do you go about fixing that?
Well, I think we have to identify, like you said, who are the kids, where do they live? Root causes are very important. Quite often, I won't have an answer because I don't know the root cause. If school is not inviting, engaging, I coached football for many years, and I hear from players all the time, and I've lost so many games for so many years as a coach. Every one of my players, I don't think I have one who I don't stay connected with. And it's not because of football, because school is like football. It's hard. It's just a repetitive thing that we have to do. But I made it engaging. It wasn't always about winning. I found a way to support those students who needed more support and to promote those who were going places beyond football. I think our school settings, and I'm not comparing it to a football game, but I think that our school settings in our district has to speak to that. Is it inviting? Why is it so easy to walk away from what I'm offering? And as staff members, are we fighting for them? When I was a principal, there was a list of about 15 on the principal's list who I ran into in Montclair who would not show up. And so it was my mission, and it has to be a mission of everyone in the district to get them to school. And I don't know what resources that is. Maybe there's a resource. Maybe there are truancy opportunities where we can send people out. Maybe there's some opportunities to build positions where we can get people out in the community to homes to knock on doors and say, hey, I haven't seen James. Can you get him to the door? Get him to school. But I would actually get in my car or truck, whatever I was driving during the year, and I would go because I wanted them to know that the person in the building who they considered to be a really important person cared about them to be there. Did I get them all back? No. But what happened is once I got them back, if I was able to get them back, we had tremendous, tremendous success stories. So I think it is about the environment. And I'm not, as I said, I don't judge an environment, but we do have to ask that question. Why is it so easy for them to walk away? And we know the challenges in the city of Trenton. We know what our students are facing. So is there a possibility that if they're not coming to us in our space, that we can maybe create another space that they would go to, like an alternative space in the city, just to connect with us for a minute, for us to check in on them? We have to build relationships differently, as I talked about a few minutes ago, than we have in the past, because our kids, they understand when you don't care. All kids do. Trenton is no different. When you don't care, they won't return. That's not to say people don't care. We just have to show it differently sometimes. And so there's no magic bullet to that. What I can tell you is we're gonna have to work hard at that. And they're gonna have to hear my message. That message is gonna have to be shared from principals. They're gonna have to hear their leaders talk about how they really need them in school. They don't want them to quit. They want futures, better futures for them. They want to see the people in their communities come out and support them when they're not in school. Somebody calls and somebody shows up. That shows that you care. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it's not. We also have to respect the fact that the challenges that many of our children might be experiencing are adult challenges. They don't know how to handle them. It's easy to give up. So we need lots of therapeutic support, lots of counseling support available for them. If we can get them to in some form of therapy or counseling, maybe they can share why they don't want to come to this school. Maybe home has created a barrier. Maybe school has created a barrier. What's keeping them from getting up, taking advantage of education? And we have to make education fun, exciting, and not always a fight. It's not a fight for us to educate children. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be in any venue at any time. Not one kid should turn something on and see us at odds about our work. We have to work hard at that every week, every month, at creating those relationships so kids can see healthy relationships from adults, and then they know it's safe to go to school. So there are just so many things that we're gonna have to do, but getting to the root cause, why are you not coming? And let them be honest, because honesty sometimes is your best medicine when they say, well, I hate that principal, I hate that teacher. They don't mean that, but there's something getting in the way of that relationship. So how can we help an administrator or teacher or district level professional build a relationship with someone so that we mend fences with a kid? So it takes a lot of work. It really does. I think that's one of the more critical things. We experienced that where I am on a small scale, but I experienced it more when I was in Montclair, just in larger numbers for kids who were challenged to be in school. And so we were trying to create those structures, those spaces, the foundations that Ms. Christ and I talked about earlier that would keep kids in school. So lots of work ahead. Thank you for that question. I think that's probably one of the keys to our success, because if they're not there, they can't learn. It's just that simple. It really is. So that's going to be one of the areas too. So I appreciate you sharing that, and I'm looking forward to that work.
And thank you for your response.
Patty?
Okay, so when we talk about building and relationships, and this isn't a question, this is a promotion, right? So when we talk about building relationships, one of the challenges that we have had is building relationships in a remote environment, right? And
Yes.
so again, a promotion. So tomorrow's attempt at building the relationship and introducing Mr. Earle to the community will be in person. And so we'll take away that whole remote notion and in fact give you an opportunity to come and actually meet our incoming superintendent, Mr. James Earle, at Trenton Central High School, of course, one of our newest facilities. And so that particular event will be a socially distanced event, so that of course we will maintain our social distances. We will also continue to wear our mask at this particular event, but we will have an opportunity to connect in person, which in fact is a little bit more conducive to building relationships and the sort. And so you will have that opportunity tomorrow to actually enter the high school. And for Mr. Earle, it will be an opportunity to kind of return home, but not to the home that he knew before, the same home with the same name, but in fact, the building is completely different. So that will be an opportunity for him as well to actually visit the new facility. And if you as staff members or community persons have not had that opportunity, then tomorrow could actually be your choice. Of course, attendance is limited. I think that we can safely hold about 150 to 200 people and still remain socially distanced. So again, that opportunity is available to you. There is a website there is a link to register, and that can be found on the Trenton School District webpage. So if you're interested, please register so we have an adequate count, because we don't want to turn anyone away, because again, we have to maintain those social distance requirements. However, if for some reason you can't get in, we will try to provide another opportunity later on. So again, this was just a promotion, not a question.
Thank you.
That's good. That's really good. I'm so thankful that we're going to have that opportunity to have face-to-face with Mr. Earle. I just want to mention some of the great comments that have been shared last week about Mr. Earle. Crystal Bennett Hood says, "Welcome back, Mr. Earle," with 4 exclamation points. You got Marilyn Hester. "Yes, welcome back to the district." 1 exclamation point, but that's great. Talithia Duncan, our TEA president, says, "Welcome back, Mr. Earle." She says, "Building relationships is key." So you hit a note on that last week. Some of the other comments that were made that we may be able to have just a few more minute discussion on. This probably will be our last discussion for our broadcast this evening, because it is somewhat of a loaded, if you will, a comment here. I want to start with Christine Sampson Clark. She says, "Let's not buy into the narrative of a learning loss. Many of our students strive even in this virtual environment, thanks to our educators and the support of our families. Let's talk about addressing opportunity gaps which existed even prior to the pandemic. The pandemic just exacerbated this gap." So I guess the question, not really a question, but what's the conversation around this notion of learning loss versus opportunity gap versus the environment that we're currently in, and how our students have been functioning well in that environment and how some have not been functioning well in that environment, based on this comment?
Well, I think last week I talked about how we've seen students, what we've learned from being in a virtual environment. And we've learned a lot how we might be able to leverage that going forward, because we've seen students excel. And I talked a few minutes ago about non-traditional environments of learning. Virtual is one of those. A student who doesn't feel good about or feel really safe about being in a classroom around peers and excels better in a virtual environment, how can we leverage that in some way? So I couldn't agree more with the comment regarding opportunity gaps. I think that's our mission. How do we address opportunity gaps? When I talked about loss, that was building a foundation. We should not and will not forget where we just came from. And I talk about loss because it's not about academic loss as much as it is when you lose something due to something so tragic so quickly. None of us understood that. Let's just be prepared for that in terms of the loss. I don't doubt, and I actually know I have experience with kids having tremendous success, and many Black and brown kids like me who are doing really well, who were not doing well in the traditional school environment, because we removed that social pressure. We removed that. I said a few minutes ago, we have teachers and students coming to school every day doing tremendous work. So my question is always, why are we not having success? And if it's opportunity, let's close those gaps. My job would be to say, if I was sitting with a group of people I would say immediately start giving me suggestions. Let's start brainstorming about how we don't have this same conversation 1 year from now. So, because this is going to be a conversation, and I think that loss must be addressed. I don't think that's the only thing. That's the beginning part of making sure that teachers, students, and everyone in our organization is safe when they return, emotionally safe, academically safe, socially safe when they return to the building. That's going to be critical. But then we're going to get back to learning. We're going to find out who's doing the work and doing it well. We're going to use those individuals as hopefully turnkey presenters to share great experience happening in their classes. The flip side of that is we're going to identify what we don't do well. And that can be very uncomfortable when you're looking at what you don't do well. But the learning takes place when you find out where you struggle. Learning is struggle. You struggle when you're learning. So I think there's just tremendous opportunity for all of us. We're going to learn a lot. And that comment is well said. We're not just talking about loss. We are talking about things that existed. What some of the Ms. Daniels or President Daniels said in some of the interviews, she talked about academic achievement. And recall, I was there 3 years, so I know this is not a today's issue. It didn't just happen during the pandemic. It's existed for a while, the struggle of finding those strategies, those structures, and building consistent, ongoing structures year over year over year that helps our students have success. So that's what it's going to take. We haven't done that yet, and that work is ahead of us. But this is a great opportunity to get to work. So I appreciate the comment. I appreciate the question. I'm looking forward to diving into those comments in spaces where I can see people face to face to talk about what they've done that was successful. What do they suggest? And when I talk about we, I'm referring to the collective we. That's everyone. So if I am talking about we and someone else is talking about they, or they're separating themselves from the work that the board, the administration, the teachers, the support staff, and everyone that touches our organization, if you separate yourself from we and us, then it's tough to be successful. I go back to football. When you have 11 on the field, one person can create a disaster in a football play. One person, one small 6-inch assignment. And so while we might see some success, we need to make sure we're paying attention to the critical detail, the specific student. We talked about that with attendance. There are a ton of things that we'll be able to discuss and have robust conversation around, even might disagree on. But at the end of the day, I think our focus and our hearts appear to be in the right place. I'm looking forward to the conversation continuing and looking forward to getting in district, meeting everyone, learning about what you've done, what you hope to do, what's your vision that other people might laugh at that we can do together. So really excited, and thank you for the comments and the opportunity to share with you again today.
It's one of the other comments from the TEA board president, Talithia Duncan. She says, research shows that the achievement gap has to be attacked on many fronts. Instruction is just one of those fronts. You have to account for poverty, crime, access to healthcare, just to name a few, which is why the mayor cannot be silent or ghost partner in this process. It takes a village. Now that's a loaded comment there as well, but I think we need some conversation around the instructional part as not just the only piece that we have to address. That's the crust of the other comment, I believe.
Well, I think that we hit a few topics today. Attendance was one from Ms. Weeklam. We talked about students not coming to school. We talked about building foundations, and I talked about root causes. So I think I'm right in the ballpark with Ms. Duncan, that we can have all the great programs, the great teachers and great instruction. If we don't know the root causes for some of the concerns that our students arrive to our schools with, then we don't make progress, because we might have to shift instruction. And that's going to take imagine me walking in saying, hey, we're going to shift all instruction. You know, that's not what people want to hear. But if the root causes, if it turns out that some of the poverty and the crime and again, loss impacts how students show up, we need to respond accordingly. That's going to be important, that everyone in the we needs to respond accordingly. And we can't worry about the cheese always being moved, because it will be. If our students are going to have success, be safe, teachers are going to feel safe, we're going to have to move some things and do some things that we maybe hadn't thought about before. But I'm not thinking about the hard part of walking into this. I understand it's going to be that way. I do see the 5-year vision down the road when we've accomplished some things. So I agree with Ms. Duncan that those things are root causes, and we do need to address those in order to have a chance to serve our public, serve our children better, and to give them a better place to learn, Mr. Trueheart.
I like the way you use Spencer Johnson's book, Who Moved My Cheese? That was great. I read that book. It's a nice small read that you can get some meaning out of. Yeah, so that's great. Yeah. Some closing comments from our board president, Addie Daniels-Lane.
So I would just like to say, I certainly can identify with some of the remarks that were shared by our incoming superintendent, Mr. Earle. Having been a school principal before, I can remember this one student that I had at the West Campus who we really couldn't get through to him, tried and couldn't get through to him, and couldn't get him to get interested, come to school or anything. And so eventually he was transferred to Daylight Twilight, which is another high school. And then 2 years later, he ended up being the graduation speaker for Daylight High School. And so I was just overjoyed that he found his corner, something that worked for him. Whereas the West Campus did not work for him, Daylight did. And I saw a different person, and so that kind of thing is exciting, right? Because we know that everything is not for everybody. And so certainly, West was a bigger campus than Daylight Twilight, so it was able to service them in a way that we could not. And so certainly, as I said, in terms of building relationships and putting people in, what do you say? You have to have the right bus and the right people on the bus and so on and so forth, and the right bus. So that was one of those circumstances where we were not the right bus for him, but another school was, right? And so he was able to find success there. And so in terms of our overall setting, this whole pandemic and our moving forward conversation in terms of you all, it's the we, as you said, we are all a part of this. And so certainly, as long as we are all a part of this, then we certainly have the capability to do those things that are necessary to make students successful. So, thank you for your commentary, and certainly thank everyone for being on the call, and thank WIMG for giving us this opportunity to come before you. And hopefully we will see you in person at Trenton Central High School. Not Mr. Earle, I know we'll see you, right? But everyone else, bring a friend. Have them to register. See you at Trenton Central High School tomorrow, and that will be at 6 p.m. And I believe Ms. Crease put the RSVP link in the chat. So thank you again. And if you missed it there, it's on the district website. So thank you again, and thank you to all who have joined us this evening.
Thank you for listening to Trenton Talks on WIMG 1300 AM, Music for the Soul, 4-time Stellar Award-winning gospel station. We thank all of our guests who are on the call and who joined us, our participants this afternoon, for our conversation with our incoming superintendent, James Earle. We appreciate your time. We appreciate the time of our board members, our board president, Addie Daniels-Lane, our board member, Jenny Weeklam, our assistant superintendent of school support, Wilfredo Ortiz, our parent community liaison and homeless liaison, Denise Crease. Jean Bowie was on the line this afternoon as well. And so we just thank each and every one of you. Everyone have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow at Trenton Central High School at 6 p.m. for an additional conversation face-to-face with our incoming superintendent, James Earle. God bless you. Have an awesome night.
Thank you.